Blue cheese stuffed ribeye steak is one of the most delicious and decadent pleasures of carnivoric gastronomy. Is carnivoric a word? Problem is that it's also the most difficult steak there is to cook, bar none. First, because ribeyes have a lot of loose fibers that want to open up, and second, because blue cheese has a low melting point, so it turns to a liquid and runs out of every crevice and burns. Getting it perfect usually takes a professional grill master with a pocket full of four-leaf clovers and a necklace of rabbit's feet. Even then, the blue cheese often overwhelms the meat. Here's a perfectly balanced filling and hopefully a method of cooking it that will make this accessible to almost anyone. When you chop the shallots, take care and make them nice and even. Don't have any large pieces in there. And begin this by melting 30 grams, about an ounce of butter on a medium heat, medium-low heat in a pan. Then we're going to sweat those shallots in the butter. Not brown them, but sweat them. When you're sweating shallots or onions or any other vegetable, you want to make sure you keep the heat low enough that it doesn't brown. They don't brown. Brown vegetables have very different flavor. After about 4 minutes of this at low temperature, I've got it on the heat on 3 out of 1 to 10. I'm adding lovage to it. If you don't have this, you can add some celery leaves and some parsley. That'll also work. Lovage is nice if you can get it. That was dried lovage, by the way. Okay, now I'm going to add that red wine. And I'm going to increase the heat from 3 to 5. A little bit more, 5.5. We want to reduce this down until it's a glaze. After about 5 minutes, most of the moisture's evaporated. Of course, the butter's not going to evaporate, so you can get an idea when it starts getting glossy and buttery looking. You know that the wine has mostly been absorbed by the shallots and the excess is evaporated, the alcohol's evaporated. Now I'm going to add the breadcrumbs in. I'm turning the heat off completely. We'll stir these together and then we're going to mix it up with the cheese. Okay, I've got the 45 grams of blue cheese in there. And the best way to do this is with a fork when it's still hot. Because that way the heat will help melt the cheese a little bit. It'll make it a little bit easier for you to incorporate it. Now, I actually made the filling for this the day before. If you're doing this, you're going to need to microwave this up just before you put it in the meat, because you'll have cold filling in the middle of cold meat. It won't cook. You need warm filling in order to help the middle of the steak cook, believe it or not. Now, the other thing, I got a ribeye steak here. It's about 314 grams. It's bigger than you would get in most restaurants. Like with all steaks, you can make it more tender using a jacquard device, one of these things. Now, there's the kind that have 3 blades. This is not very good for this kind of little steak. So you're just going to, especially when you're going to stuff it, you're just going to flatten it out. This is more for larger pieces of meat. This one with only a single row of blades is real good. And you find the bone. Turn it over. And this will break down, cut up all of the connective tissues that are in there. And the next step for stuffing this, you want the sharpest knife you can find. Really sharp, really sharp. It's not like a pork chop where you've got, you can just make like a little pocket in here and fill it in. A ribeye steak's got too many openings in it, so you have to take this a little bit different approach. You're gonna stab this in. We're going to actually cut it all the way open. It's not the best way to stuff meat normally. It's not the best way to stuff meat, but in this case we got no choice. Okay, let's show you. I opened up a great big wide pocket in here. Great big one. Going to go in the middle, fill it in as best you can, kind of squeeze it down after it gets in there. How much filling you put in is up to you, of course. This is a pretty tasty filling. You want to use as much as you can. And it just takes a few minutes to get it all in there. Okay, now because that filling's hot in there, you can't do this in advance. What's going to happen, it's going to start causing the meat to rot in the middle. So you have to put this hot filling in real soon before you're going to cook it. I mean, okay, 10 minutes it's going to be just fine. But don't put it in there and then leave it sit around for 2 or 3 hours, or put it back in the refrigerator, or you'll have contaminated meat. That's not going to be good. So next we're going to tie string around this to kind of hold it together a little bit, just add a little bit more stability. Some of this filling is going to leak out no matter what you do, I can tell you. Nothing you do is going to make it hold together perfectly because of the type of meat that it is and the just the nature of the beast. But that's okay. We're gonna help it. A little bit of leak out. So now we're going to season it up. We're not going to use as much salt as usual because it's that cheese in there is pretty salty to begin with. It's got salt in there. And some cracked black pepper. I'm only putting it on one side, again, because it's already got a lot of seasoning. Also, I'm not using olive oil. Olive oil and blue cheese are not a good combination usually, and this is certainly an example of that. So I'm just using plain vegetable oil on the top of this. Now we're going to heat up that pan. You want to get the cast iron pan really hot, like 240, 250 Celsius. It's about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And after 2.5 minutes, turn it over, put a piece of butter on it, like this, and into the oven it goes. Because of that stuffing in the middle, we have a different schedule than we would usually use. This is after 3.5 minutes. I'm turning it around and it goes back in the oven. I would not do this with a normal steak. Okay, we got 3.5 minutes have passed. I'm putting it back around a little bit, dripping of this stuffing out of the edges here. That's okay. I'm going to let it sit on this pan, flipped over again. I'm going to let it sit here for about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to transfer it to a plate. Okay, now I've got this melted butter and fat on here that's flavored, of course, with the blue cheese. We'll put this on and knock off. You have some little pieces of coagulated blood, I think is mostly what it is. You want to scrape that off. But the rest of it's nice, glossy finish. And of course, we're going to let this rest real well. Now, of course, you can dress this up with some herbs or something on top, but let's just take a look at what that meat looks like inside. This is what we want to see. And there we have it. And you can see it's still rare along this one side, but there's plenty of filling, and this is going to be nice and tender. If you like my videos, look for my cookbook, now available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other internet bookseller sites. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.